Aaron!
I am so grateful that we are live with our friends and family in attendance because I have something incredibly important to get off my chest.
I hope it's not your shirt. Actually, I do hope it's your shirt.
I got that meat.
Sweet boy.
So, you well know I've been back in the Mid-Ohio Valley for some time. So the thing that I have to get off my chest, the on-ramp is for accelerating. I repeat, the on-ramp is for accelerating.
If you people haven't f***ing learned that by now, then what are you even doing driving?
If you merge into a 65 or 70 doing 40, you deserve the consequences of your actions.
Which is probably to stub your toe repeatedly on your coffee table for at least 3 days in a row, or until you change your actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, people are hyper unconscious nowadays.
Yeah.
So no one has any idea what's going on.
Dude, okay. It's a crazy world we live in, right? We got drones flying all over the states right now. We have TikTok ban that's looking to happen sometime in January if they don't sell TikTok. I don't know if you've heard about that yet. And, I mean, we have CEOs getting gunned down, dude. Like, fucking nuts out there in the world. I'm sure you've heard of that one.
Yeah. My boy Luigi was actually here all day that day, so I'm not sure how they trumped up these charges on him.
I saw a meme earlier where it was like, it definitely wasn't Luigi, whatever his last name is. It was obviously Waluigi. I was like, damn. I was like, they're really putting my boy Waluigi. Yo, Tim, take your glasses off. You kind of look like Luigi.
Could you pop that up in the chat for the video?
Oh. Hey, yo.
How good.
Put these bad boys back on. I'm trying to keep my my identity a secret. Okay.
No doubt. So we want to talk about that and some other stuff that's going on societally. So Tim, what's your take on this Luigi ordeal?
Okay. So I really want to preface before we talk about this that I personally do not support any kind of violence in trying to reform policies or changing the world or how, it affects things. I think violence is not the proper method, even though there's a lot of people who would argue that violence is the only method.
Yeah.
But I think winning via like outsmarting your enemy or, forcing an actual change makes a lot more sense. So with that being said, there's a bunch of like memes and everything floating around on the internet and take what you see with a grain of salt, man. Some people are talking about how the healthcare business made like hundreds of billions of dollars last year. And then like the total cost for everybody's medical was a significantly less percentage of that. And
it's like half.
The healthcare companies could have easily paid off everybody's medical expenses and still made a profit, but they're over here just, putting people in serious crippling debt and yada, yada. I didn't fact check any of that information. I don't know how true any of it really is. So I can't lean one way or the other and be like, yeah, them. Don't get me wrong. The healthcare system in America is completely jacked up. Like we got people who are paying out arm and leg, losing houses, losing cars, losing, everything. And, they just had to go and get a life-saving treatment. So not only do they have nothing, but they're also stuck in recovery and continuously paying into medical.
You and I have both started GoFundMe for care for our parents.
Yeah. It sucks, man. It sucks. The manifesto, the Luigi, I guess his name is, his manifesto was supposedly discovered, pretty short thing, essentially giving his background and talking about why he did what he did and so on and so forth. By the time this episode comes out too, this event is going to probably be history in the in the world of the internet because, you know, our attention spans are like 10 seconds long and we're going to find something else to talk about. But yeah, I don't know. There needs to be a change, and that change isn't going to come down from gunning people down. You know, that change is going to happen by people putting the right people in office and actually like voting and, you know, going about things in a more political manner. It's the slow method, but the slow method is going to have long-term effects. And we have to think about this as like, you know, we're trying to plant the acorns so the mighty oaks will shade our children and our grandchildren, not for ourselves.
Yeah. I've said many a time that we are a tower generation, and we are a fulcrum. Like we are the ones seeing that what happened before did not work or is not working anymore. So we have to discern what's next and implement that change. So, you know, I think there are several things we're going to discuss today that need heavy reform, healthcare being one of them.
What's your take on this, though, Aaron? Like, how do you feel about Waluigi?
My wife and I had a very interesting evening whenever this first popped off because I'm retired security forces. She is a retired heathen.
That explains the tattoos.
Yeah. She used to be very ornery and F-12 and ACAB and all that. So she was surprised that the conversation, I was like, hell yeah, screw those guys. Like, they don't represent us. And she was like, that's a literal crime. We cannot condone murder, which it is the official stance of this podcast that we do not condone violence in any form, fit, or fashion. But the American people are fed up. And, you know, part of that is that that's what reality has in store for us, is us being tired of what's not working so that we have to implement change. As somebody who lives with a high level of pain all the time, I get it.
Yeah.
If the VA weren't taking care of me, quote unquote, taking care of me, meaning anytime I'm in pain, I message my doctor and they send me another bottle of pills, I could be Luigi. Not saying that I have those tendencies or anything, but I get it. Like, damn.
Well, it's such an extreme reaction to an extreme situation. That's really what it boils down to at the end of the day. Like, Waluigi over there is throwing his tortoise shells during Mario Kart, but that's because he's been sick and tired of hitting the banana 500 times, you know? Like, he's gonna get pissed, man. And
that's a great metaphor.
Thanks. I'm really hanging on this Waluigi idea. I think it's really, really funny. But, I mean, yeah, people are just fed up. And it's exactly like what we talked about in previous episodes, but everybody's first immediate reaction is, you know, fight or flight. So it's either they get the fuck out of the situation or they're going to fight. I mean, they have to get their mindset past that from their hindbrain to their frontal cortex and actually work on those executive functions and actually work themselves through those situations. But you find yourself, it's like a cornered animal, man. People are finding themselves stuck in a corner, no way out. And the next thing you know, tortoise shells, man.
Yeah. I think I'm so grateful for every guest we've had because they each teach us something new. And something that's really helped me in my interpersonal interaction since we had the recording was with Ryan Higginson, where he said, if you match the energy, it amplifies. And I think that's part of this, is there was just this cycle of hate and like, screw you, no, screw you, as in his example, that then amplified until there was nowhere to go but, you know, popping off the pressure release valve. I think a huge reason that so many Americans are sick and dying and just feeling awful all the time, myself included, is that we aren't present in this moment to, you know, be present with our bodies and discern what's wrong. Like, my neck hurts all the time, And instead of doing interventions, stretching, massage therapy, doing things of that nature, I just bury it down
Yeah.
and go do other things so I don't have to think about it. And
that bottle's overflowing, man.
yeah. And I think that's another huge thing with the obesity epidemic. I find myself eating all the time because I don't have something else to do, and I don't just want to sit here uncontrived, not doing anything, being present in this moment. Because, you know, in Highland's episode, he said 5 minutes is a very long time to sit with your thoughts.
It is 100%.
So, you know, last night on my 8-hour shift, sitting in my car, staring at a gate, I spent a fairly significant portion eating honey roasted peanuts, which is just peanuts covered in sugar.
Not even real sugar. That's the problem. It's this crap, this high fructose corn syrup that we got out there. Do you have any specific practices or routines that help you stay grounded and present throughout your day? Just a real quick thing to put out there for our audience listening. This episode is our live fireside recording where we invited everybody who participated in our audience-led survey. We invited them to join as guests, and there's actually a chat that we have access to during the recording. So if you hear us drifting off and asking or reading aloud something and then answering it, that's where the questions are coming from. They're coming from real living human beings who are watching us sit here and talk into a microphone because they love us and they really care about us. So I'm a real human being. Yes, you are. Yes, you are, Eric. And we love you for that.
You're one of my favorite beans.
I wonder if these show up on actual recording. Do you have any specific practices or routines that help you stay grounded and present throughout your day? Aaron?
My big thing, thanks to Thich Nhat Hanh and several of my friends, is just reminding myself where I am and when I am. The time is now. I'm eating or drinking water, drinking coffee, and thanks to Ryan, being grateful for it, thanking it, really programming that gratitude into whatever I'm doing. Yeah. So my big thing is finding joy in doing that. Even driving, just kind of like breathing, look around and be like, wow, it is beautiful here. I'm so grateful that I'm going to do this or that. How about you?
I'm sorry, but when you were just driving around being like, my first thought was there's a really gross organic processing plant that's right in the middle between my house and work. So it's by the time I'm relaxed driving and getting in my flow in the morning, I'm just, it's just so terrible, dude. Oh God. Anyway, for me, I don't have a good answer for this question. So I'm currently in a process of learning how to keep myself grounded and present. I find that the time I feel the most present is when I'm with my wife. I feel like a lot of that has to do with her, interacting and talking with me. And, I look at her as like the rock for me, So I think a lot of it does come down to right now, I'm trying to figure out how to keep myself grounded when I'm by myself, but it's very difficult, and I'm really trying to work through it. It's a complex situation, and I'm still learning how to do it. It's probably going to be an ever-growing process to me, especially with my generalized anxiety disorder. I just have a very hard time relaxing and being present. Just a hard thing for me to do. I'd rather put on some YouTube and listen to them talk about serial killers from the 80s.
That's another huge thing that is a distraction that leads to massive detriment in our lives is phone dependency.
Yeah.
Having to have this little stimulus box 18 inches away from your nose at all times so you don't have to look past that 18 inches.
Right. What?
It is ridiculous.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's one of the interesting things about our current generation, dude, is because like you and I think the generation before us would be lumped into it as well, but we're stuck in this weird phase where we've experienced like a massive disconnect from the internet, and slowly our lives transitioned to a huge interconnected world where everybody can just get on Facebook and see what's going on everywhere, dude. Twitter. I know people who go to Twitter for world news. Like, that's it. They just go there and they're like, what's going on in, you know, X, Y, and Z situation, or go to hashtag Brexit and find out what that was all about, you know? We have experienced like the world of the SNES and PlayStation 1. You know, gaming was two people sitting in front of a small 20-inch CRT TV and, you know, trying not to screen peek at each other.
And your go home alarm was the streetlights. No one was calling you.
Exactly.
No one was texting you.
Yeah.
You didn't know what time.
Your phone was connected to a wire in the car. I mean, okay, boomers. I can already hear it. But yeah, it's just, you know, we've experienced the shift from that. But the current generations, hell, we got people joining the military who were born in 2001, 2002. Even younger, actually. Whatever 24 minus 18 is. 2006, I think, would be the youngest.
Oh, God, don't say that.
Yeah, 2006 would be the youngest fresh 18-year-olds from high school joining the military right now. And that is crazy, dude, because in 2006, bro, we were in middle school.
Yeah, we would have been 13-ish?
13, yeah.
So yeah, we would have been in 8th grade, developing our friendship, trying to hate each other and not doing a very good job.
Yep, and playing Halo 2 on an old school Xbox.
Yep, no screen peeking.
Yeah, like we got people who are growing up and dude, they've never lived in a non-internet or non-connected, non-Facebook world. And I think a lot of that is diving into like this ability to not stay grounded, you know, like everything is cell phone related. And education has not caught up to that. You know, people aren't understanding the effects that this is going to have in the long term because we got 20 years of data at best to really label it and be like, hey, this is what it's looking like right now. I've seen some stuff where people are talking about how the human body is going to evolve in the future. And based off of how many screens we use and everything, like our necks are going to become like punched, our eyes going to get bigger and our hands are going to get smaller. And like, I'm just like, we're going to turn into fucking T-Rexes, dude. Like,
T-Rex or the Greys.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. Eric in the chat mentioning switching to the Army in 2018. It really messed him up because the very next year, we're going to be born after 9/11. And that's a huge shift we've seen in the military is people coming in born after 9/11. Because those of us that was like a foundational event in our lives, it forever altered the level of patriotism in your heart and in your soul. So a lot of current service members who are coming in, they don't see it as this incredible act of service, this sacrifice, etc. It's just a job.
If anything, too, like the dwindling years since 2001 and you know, the patriotism and the spark of USA, USA, USA. You know, we have freaking Toby Keith over there singing about how great America is and everything. And everybody in all 50 states were united. But here we are 23 years later, and people are like, you know, Operation Iraqi Freedom, what was that all about? And there wasn't no WMDs. We went there for oil. And, you know, it's because everybody reads a crazy cracked article somewhere, and they're just like, whoa, dude, no fact check, none needed. I read it on Twitter. It's got to be true. They put hashtag fuck Brexit, and I had to believe it. So it's crazy, man. Like, you know, people are really steering away from that, and we're existing in a world where people are taking a lot of stuff at face value, man. Sorry, sorry, let me rephrase that a little bit. I know exactly what you're going to say. People have been taking things at face value, and we've reached a point of skepticism on the internet now where now nobody believes anything they hear on the internet. It's a crazy, 180 they've done.
I'm not sure if it is that so much as the benefit of hindsight. Initially we were told all about the WMDs and they're an existential threat to us. And don't get me wrong, there were WMDs. Siberni, they had chemical and biological weapons to an extent. They didn't have nukes. Sorry, W.
Don't apologize to him. He doesn't even know who you are.
That's fair. This was Dick Cheney making billions of dollars, sending tens of thousands of young people to their deaths or to be forever changed and scarred.
Yeah.
And we're realizing that going over there and killing people for 20 years did not make us safer.
Mm-hmm.
And now people are like, okay, well then why are we still over there killing people if that hasn't worked historically with all the evidence we have?
Yeah.
Again, super grateful for Ryan, just pouring love into people and how do we help? What has brought you to this moment where you want to kill us because you are filled with so much vitriol?
Mm-hmm. Dude, it's a complicated world out there. There's over 8 billion people out there in the world now. It's so insane for me to think about, but I know through Ryan's teachings and not his most recent episode. His most recent episode was as of the recording of this, which is the 16th of December, but we had a conversation about death and, trying to learn to live with understanding and conquer your fear of death. The episode prior to that was talking about transforming your emotions and transmuting yourself into a higher vibration and allowing yourself to be, part of the 8,000 Hearts movement, which was the concept that, if just 8,000 people shifted their mindset to radiate positivity, they could change the world. Which, dude, I really hope stuff like that is true. I've talked about it. I'm a huge skeptic on a lot of things, but I really do firmly believe that positivity is a very powerful force. And, if you just start doing good things and good deeds out there, you can really make a huge impact at the bare minimum in your community around the people who you love and care about.
Yeah, I think the 8,000 Hearts movement, as far as changing society and the world at large, I think that's 8,000 masters who are holding that deity level vibration of service, compassion, love at all times.
Yeah.
I think what's going to change our individual lives the most, since attaining that level takes several lifetimes, according to some traditional literatures.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be just doing it on a small scale, just watering that seed of love and compassion every opportunity we get. That's another great thing that was brought up in that episode was, if we spend our time around saints, we don't get to watch it. We don't get to water the seed of compassion because we don't need it. Seeing somebody being triggered into their hindbrain and acting a fool, as I feel inclined to put it now, gives us the opportunity to love them despite what they're presenting and how it's making us feel with our initial reaction.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and it makes sense to me. You talked about, 8,000 master level people with that kind of vibration. I just feel like if we had 8,000 Keanu Reeves, the world would be a much better place. Truth be told.
Oh my God. 100%. If we had 2 Keanu Reeves, the world would be a much better place.
I hope that man has children. I don't know if he does or not, but I really hope he does.
Okay. So, we have some other things up on the docket.
Yeah.
Feel like we're wandering.
A little bit.
Do you want to get into religion or education?
I am more of a person who feels comfortable talking about religion. However, I'm not comfortable talking about education, so I want to do that one. I want to try and put my chops to the test here.
Okay. So, we're talking about broken things in this episode. The education system is cracked. No one leaves school feeling prepared for life. The education system was built back during the Industrial Revolution and has not changed since. We have amazing people like Mr. Chaz, our good friend, trying to promote emotional intelligence and clarity and stuff so that we do have functional people coming out of the education system. But again, no one leaves school feeling prepared. I think we really need to radically transform the education system so that we have functional human beings coming out of the system.
But yeah, I completely agree, dude. Like, our education system is pushing for people to, they're trying to put circles and squares. And that's just not what it is anymore. Like, we are and always have been a very emotionally driven species. And rather than focusing on how to control our emotions first and foremost, we're learning multiplication and how to write cursive. It's kind of silly.
I'm going to go off our chat here a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Sister K says, school systems should not be treated like one size fits all. Everyone learns differently. And that's one of the things that Montessori schools do best, which is where rich people send their kids, which is it's a collective effort to get to yes, or to get to the knowledge and the understanding. Those who have a better grasp are kind of imbued with this sense of responsibility that they need to help those who don't understand. And I think that's an incredible societal boon to kind of instill that in the place where people are existing most of the time growing up. Anyhow, Eric says after working in a prison, he's very unnerved. Sorry, I'm putting words in his mouth. He's a bit unnerved about how similar public schools and state prison is. And yeah, that's one thing we talked about in Joshua Dean's episode is schools function very much so like prisons. And personally, I think there's a big reason for that. I mean, in America, we have 5% of the world's population and 20% of the world's prison population, which is ridiculous. Most, if not all, of my apprehensions were for nonviolent crimes. Just people violating rules. Which, looking back, these people should not have been apprehended and sent to captain's mast. I should have told their chief and their master chief, and they should have been remediated, I think is the appropriate word here. And societally, I think that's really what we need is if someone commits a crime, we need to look at the why and fix the why instead of just punishing the what.
I have a theory behind why the prisons and public school systems work the same. And, I feel like it's because both of them are federal programs and they just kind of swap SOPs and PPRs per se, for prisons, like they have to have reforming systems and everything. So let's just use pre-established policies that are already created. And then vice versa, the school needs safety features applied and precautionary measures. So they just take pre-established ones. It's like whenever, the Navy investigation, the Navy's investigation manual is an Army manual. Like we just took the Army's manual for investigations. Like we use a lot of the Army stuff for DNA and fingerprint submissions because the program's already in place. Why create one specifically for us when we can just use this other one? I think that's a lot of the reasons why there's so much overlap, especially in the federal systems. To be like, look at any of the federal departments of anything: Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, Department of Education, Department of what is the federal prison one? Like the Department of
Corrections.
Department of Corrections, or the Corrections Department, or whatever they would refer to it as. They all just swap paperwork and everything, and they're all just living in the same sterilized type of environment because they're all federal government jobs. Not that makes anything right. I think that's my theory. Kirsten here says, America is so behind. We are a third world country with a Gucci belt. A Gucci belt, man. Yeah, there we go.
And the Gucci belt is the military.
Yeah. The Air Force specifically. Would you agree or think that maybe our education systems in public schools is where children learn their worst habits? There's almost no way to protect your kid from other kids. No, not necessarily. Yes and no. Okay, so you have this idea, like, human beings by nature, we're a sociable creature. So learning a lot of the majority that, the majority of our personality and our developmental skills are through interacting and socializing. And yes, some of those habits are going to be bad and detrimental, and people will pick up bad habits, smoking, drugs, alcohol usage, partying, things of that nature. And they could pick that up at a young age before they're, supposed to, from a legal standpoint. But ultimately, I think the social development that most children get from their time in public schools is far more beneficial than it would be detrimental. I think, and that's just looking at the social aspect of it. If we're talking about the education aspect and throwing that in there, it's a completely different blender. But separating them and sterilizing it, the socializing portion is a very crucial part to development, growing up, and learning your emotional thresholds.
I agree with your sentiment, but I disagree with the headline. Public school is where children learn their worst habits. Almost no way to protect your kids from other kids. I agree with the idea behind the question. And I also agree with you, Tim. I think that we are social creatures. We need to interact. And most people would not be interacting with as many people if it weren't for public schools or school generally. But since we aren't taught from an early age to observe, don't absorb, what we end up with is, let's see, there were about 1,000 kids in our high school. 1,000 people coming from brokenness, or just 1,000 people with scar tissue from the complex traumas they were enduring, trying to grow up and trying to become normal humans. And we didn't have protective measures in place to notice that's going on outside. I can be secure on the inside. So yes, I think there is a lot of damage being done in public school. Most of us were bullied. Most of us had stuff go on that we weren't stoked about. So I do think it's incredibly important that we do recognize that there is a lack of safety inherent in the system as far as school goes, and that's another thing we need to face. And again, I'm very grateful for Mr. Chaz kind of leading the charge there, teaching kids how to enforce boundaries, how to understand and respect boundaries, and how to really be loving, caring people who don't cause trauma.
Yeah. I do agree with what you're saying there, Aaron. I guess the way I look at it is like, that is a problem at the education level for sure. Like the safeguards and the bumpers are down. We're bowling with gutters possible here, guys and gals. The point is that, and I'm not saying this is okay, I'm just saying if it doesn't happen in school, that stuff continues to happen outside of the area as well. Like, we can put as much safety measures in school as possible to prevent bullying and, actual assaults and drug usage and things of that nature, like the negative impacts that children have. But the moment they walk out of that school, like, what are you going to do? Like, your kids are going to go to the mall or whatever, and there's probably going to be some type of bad influence there. If we look at it as only fixing it in the schools, it's just going to be found in a different location. But if we looked at it as fixing it as a society as a whole, we would be able to tackle it, you know, from a much wider scale to a smaller scale. How do you fix that? I don't know, man. Like you said, right? How many people are in America? Like, there's a lot. So how do you fix something like that? How can you legitimately know that your children are being protected? And at what point do you stop looking at it as protecting your kids from other kids? Because people join the military and get bullied, assaulted, and things of that nature. That's still somebody's child, even though they're 21, 22, 18, whatever, right? So it's not just the education system, it's everything.
Yeah. Personally, I have and will continue to advocate for a more communal living arrangement. I think that if it was, you know, the 10 of our friends and my wife's 10 friends and your wife's 10 friends living on a big plot where we build our little cabins and spend our day cultivating crops and stuff so that we can survive without...
I don't want gardening all day. No, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. And tons of our friends are having kids right now because we're at that stage in our lives. So then raising them together and being there to advocate for each other, I think that'd be a massive shift. But according to like the hierarchy of civilization, that would be regression back to tribalism versus societal civilization,
societalism
stuff. Yeah.
Interesting though, because you're tickling this idea, right? Where it's like when we were smaller communities, there was a lot less worry that stuff was going to happen so blatantly as it does now. Does that mean like back in the 1800s in the one-room schoolhouses, kids weren't getting bullied? No, they were definitely still getting bullied. But it was like, you know, your father, man, Jebediah, son of Jebediah, knows little Tomalin's kid or whatever, knows their father or something. Like it's such a small-knit community that it's like, hey, your kid's been acting up around my kid. Fix him. Okay, I will, Jebediah, or whatever their names were back in the 1800s. So from Brittany here, there is a lack of attention to mental health, which has become an increasingly important issue among students. I completely agree. Yes, 100%. Yeah, no, mental health, emotional maturity and things of that nature have just gone out the window. Like, they're so focused on making sure kids know how to find the square root of pi that they don't care if they're happy. You know, that's not the question that they're asking in the morning. They're just being like, open up your books to page 356. And people will be like, werewolves? Is that a Harry Potter reference? I don't know if anybody got that.
I sure did.
Kirsten has a really interesting comment here. They're already trying to remove education on slavery, replacing it with the term involuntary relocation. Have you heard this?
I haven't heard this specifically, but I know that we are erasing huge swaths of our history with PC terminology, which doesn't convey the reality.
Yeah, I think I do agree with you. Like, we're switching to this mindset and switching our terminology away from like these offensive phrases and verbiage. Like, okay, this is where my mind goes. So bear with me, audience. Please don't leave. Please. We love you guys. Magic the Gathering recently replaced a lot of their cards, as did Dungeons and Dragons. And a lot of that comes to the fact that they're using words that they didn't feel comfortable with. Like slave actually was a term that was referred to as certain races in Dungeons and Dragons. Like, hey, these are typically slaves of this race or whatever. That stuff's gone. Like, they got rid of that because they're like, we don't need slavery in our fantasy world. You know, we've had to deal with that in the real world. Throw that out, right? And then the term race was actually replaced as well with, I think they changed it to heritage or something. I can't remember what they changed it to, but they did the same thing in Magic the Gathering where they got rid of the word tribal because tribal was considered, like, hey, that's not a PC word anymore. And a part of me says, a part of me really thinks like, okay, I do think that changing how we communicate is very important to make sure that we're not purposefully offending others and talking in a manner that is considered more extreme than it needs to be. But in certain situations, like in the education where they talk about slavery, they shouldn't really be changing those words. People need to know how abhorrent that portion of history was. That'd be like changing the words of like what happened in the Holocaust to being like, yeah, everybody took a D8 sleep. Like that doesn't convey anything. There's some things in history, there's some things in education that you just can't make PC. It's just it can't happen.
Yeah, and that raises that links back to a conversation with Eric Lee where I think this was Eric, talking about like jumping off a boat. Oh, no, this might have been another interview I had seen. But a spec war guy jumped off a boat on a ship, and it was about 4 feet from the deck of the boat to the deck of the ship. And his friend almost lost his mind and was like, everyone on the bridge just crapped their pants. Because there is a certain level of risk mitigation that then becomes self-defeating. There has to be some risk baked into the system in order for learning to take place. In order for us to not repeat history and do the bad stuff again is understanding how freaking bad it was. We need to know, history shouldn't be filtered. You're absolutely right. We need to know how awful it was, what really happened, so we can avoid those thought patterns and those action patterns in the future. I agree with you, Tim, that we need to look at these things right in the face, call them what they are, and learn from them so we do not repeat them.
Yeah. Eric here had a really interesting comment, and I'll go back up to the other ones too. I don't want to skip out on anything here because there looks like there's some really important ones up here. Military officers are so bad about taking risks these days. And what I really find interesting about that, Eric, so there's actually been a report that came out that military officers are refusing to take command. Like just straight up, like, I don't want to be the CO or XO or whatever of that base. Like, I don't want to be the person in charge. And shout out to Terminal CWO over on Instagram. He's got 50-some thousand followers. So all 5 of the people who listen to our show, you can go follow him and give him, 50,000 and some plus 4. But what's awesome is he does keep up with a lot of information like that. And he recently posted about how military officers in the Army specifically was what he was referencing, do not want to take command. They don't want to take charge, and they don't want to be put in those command leadership positions. Now, the way he frames it is it's because they understand the soldiers or sailors or Johns or Joes or whatever that they're in charge of. I don't think you can be in charge of Johns. I think that's a different profession, right?
Absolutely. We'll need to bring our SME back for that conversation.
Yeah. But yeah, like the officers are just not wanting, it's Joe's just silly goose. Yeah, the Johns over there in the army. But yeah, like they're not wanting to take command, and I completely agree with you, Eric. Military officers are so bad at taking risks these days because they don't feel like there's any kind of safety net to back them. How many commanding officers have been relieved in the past 12 months in the Navy, dude? Seriously, there's one ship that's gone through like 2 commanding officers in the past year. That is bananas. And they're always cited for the same reason, because of lack of confidence. But we all know what that actually means. They either weren't a yes man or they were a no man, Like they're not following the little breadcrumb trail and doing what they're being told, or they want to, they want to be on
the party line.
Exactly. Own fucking program is what we like to call it in the military. But yeah, we're really living in a world where, being too safe is starting to become a detriment in a way. I do want to go back up to this, to another comment, unless you have anything further for this one, Aaron.
Yes. Really quick, I want to drop one more breadcrumb for the education thing. As far as rewriting history, the level of 1984 doublethink being employed these days is astounding. So that's something we have to be cognizant of and watch out for in our lives, is the dystopian novel that Kirsten references here. Read 1984, read Fahrenheit 451. Back to the military really quick. There used to be a culture of personal responsibility. During World War II, the reason we won the war is because every single person was empowered to make the best decision with what they had at the time. Whereas now, every time you're faced with a decision, you have to run it all the way up to the command, and then he has to run it up to headquarters, and they have to run it to the Pentagon, and then the decision comes back down. Yes, you're allowed to go pee. No, you're not allowed to refuel your unit.
We don't have funding for that.
I think the way we get back into a healthy ecosystem is empowering people at every level and holding them accountable in a healthy manner. It's no longer acceptable for you to take a risk, or let's say you and I are running a security team and we have 4 people for one entry control point, and we say, hey, you guys figure it out, I don't care, just make sure the gate's covered. Now we have to know who's on the gate every second of the day, so that whenever someone's upset, we can give out our 50 lashes.
Look for the scapegoat, the proper scapegoat.
Exactly. So,
hey, sorry, that was your position on the watch bill, man.
We really, really need to be empowering leaders at every level in the military so that we aren't running into death by decision. You aren't making 500 decisions and referencing 30 instructions for everyone. It's you have shown a level of competency that allowed you to attain your rank. So do what's best. And if we need an explanation, we'll take that explanation. And if we need to remediate, we remediate and move on. And then if there's a pattern of misconduct, then we remove you from the organization.
Yeah, accountability is very important, of course. And it doesn't make sense anymore, right? Yes, I don't want to beat a dead horse too much here, but there's a couple other comments up here if we scroll up. So Eric, I think they fall under the Department of Justice. So when we were talking about prisons, they have their own departments of corrections. Okay. Aaron, your mustache looks very fancy today. I see you already responded to that, but I wanted the world to know that Kirsten thinks your mustache looks very fancy today.
Well, thank you.
Kirsten, also, big dangers in school now are gun violence. Yeah, it's really heartbreaking. It's sad. I don't think 20 years ago that was a major thought. Columbine was 2006, wasn't it? Or was it a little bit earlier than that? When did Columbine happen?
If only we had computers at our disposal.
Yeah, I know, right?
April 20th, 99.
99, okay, yeah. Yeah, I think at that point, Columbine was the worst. And I remember when we were in 8th grade or 7th grade, Aaron, that was the Virginia Tech shooting.
Yeah.
And even then, shootings at schools were kind of few and far in between, it felt like. But then, what was it? When did Sandy Hook happen? Because I feel like Sandy Hook was the floodgates. That was when it really started happening all the time. And that's, man, I want to say that was 12 years ago.
2012. So yeah, exactly 12 years ago.
Yeah. Damn. Thanks, Eric.
Almost to the day.
Holy shit. That's crazy. Yeah. Sandy Hook it felt to me, that's like the moment I look to when I'm like, wow, that's when it started getting out of hand. And I don't know why or what happened necessarily, but it's so sad, man. It's so sad.
Yeah. And that's kind of when we were initially programmed for, well, it's part of the system, suck it up. It's just reality now. Which, again, that's something that we are going to have to change, is no longer accepting the status quo, looking the problem in the face, and finding a freaking solution.
Let's see here. Going down a little bit further here. Slowly building a community of friends where we'll hire a teacher and homeschool at one of our houses. I like that. Again, I'm not gardening though. I'm not doing that. If it involves the sun, it doesn't involve me.
Sure. Pasty boy.
Yeah, right. America's become a dystopian novel.
100%.
Handmaid's Tale. I'm trying to find an article a friend shared about a NATO ally doing a very complex and high-risk live fire exercise. Holy crap. That's very practical. My first thought was how an army officer would crap his pants at the thought. Yeah, that's fair.
So we are coming up towards the end of our recording window. So, to our guests here in the chat with us, what do you guys want before we close? How can we best serve you?
It's the highest honor to serve.
Super Natty. Okay. I've been watching it again. I'm on season 13.
Supernatural.
Having a hard time because I'm definitely a season 5 or 6 fella. Then after it just kind of devolved for me.
Yeah, I've rewatched seasons 1 through 5 so many times, but after that, I always just restart. I don't know. I love the way they did 1 through 5, like the like DGOS like filter over everything and the classic rock music, which apparently they got rid of the classic rock songs like for what's it called when a TV show serialization. I can't remember, but anyway, like once they started streaming it on like Netflix and stuff, they got rid of the classic rock music. And but I have the Blu-rays and it has the classic rock versions on there, so
good.
Yeah, no, love Supernatural.
The only thing I would change is I wish they found the bunker sooner, because that just made things simpler.
And I miss the episodes where they would just be driving around, stopping at like motels and crap. Because like when Sam and Dean get to the motel, that's when shit happens every time, dude. Every time. Like that's when somebody's gonna die. That's when a possession happens. That's when Sam and Dean have their classic like falling out moments. Every time, dude. The motel scenes were the most important.
Yeah. You may have changed my mind.
Yeah. Once they get to the bunker, dude, it's just they chill out a little bit too much for my liking. And I'm like, no, I want my gun shooting, hard tooting 1960s muscle car driving Dean Winchester, and his brother too, I guess, can join.
Yeah. I do think this might be a case where simplicity isn't better. We definitely need that element of uncertainty. Yeah.
I like what Eric set up here right above Kirsten, where he said the media needs to take some accountability on how they report the shootings. Yes. The media, dude, I hate the 24/7 media cycle that we have existing in this society right now. It is awful. Awful. There needs to be some accountability. There needs to be something about that. Something has to be done about that, dude. Like, I remember back in, oh my God, okay, boomer. Back in 2002, when like you would turn on the TV and anytime past 6 o'clock, like there was no news. It was just like America's Funniest Home Videos. And, you know, you'd watch some kids fall from, you know, like a little high chair or something. or cats slipping into water, fun stuff. Back when the world wasn't so dangerous and so big. Oh, man. Okay, boomer. I'm done being a boomer for a little while, guys. When I watched an episode, I couldn't take their voices seriously. Then I learned that's just how they talk. Yeah. Media is made to divide the world right now. Media execs up there with healthcare execs. Yeah. There's going to be a Waluigi or a what was
Waluigi.
Waluigi, and what was the other one? Wario. Yeah. Again, no streetlights does not stand with violent acts. I know, there's jokes that we float around. Aaron and I have that kind of, what do you call it, Aaron? The humor?
Gallows humor.
Yeah. A lot of that comes from our time in active duty. We keep it on the back burner a lot during the recording of this show, but it comes out, I think Aaron and I are leaning a little bit more heavily into our military side these days. All them Johns out there.
God. Okay. So, Tim, is there anything you want to touch on before we wrap?
No, everything that I want to touch on, we're going to say in the exit, the outro. So
normally we open up by thanking our guests. I want to start by thanking our audience. Thank you guys for responding to our survey, helping us grow as a show, and taking time out of your busy day to sit here while Tim and I rant about healthcare, education, and supernatural.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and to all those that weren't part of the actual recording process, but if you're listening to this episode, I want to give a huge thank you to you too. Our show runs for you, the audience. And without you guys, there's no streetlights. No, but seriously though, you guys really keep us going, and we just really appreciate you. So if you like the episode, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, let us know what your favorite part was, or just tell us what you think on some of these topics. We didn't dive into the religion aspect that we thought we were, but we'll save that for another live recording Fireside. And hey, that might be happening sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So the ways you can support us and join us, head over to our Discord. You can interact with us directly. You can ask us questions to forward to our guests. Massive shout out to Eric Spears. And then further thanks and gratitude to Ketria and Highland. You guys are amazing. Everyone else in the audience, thank you so much for being part of this journey with us. We love you. How you can support us directly is Patreon. Head over to Patreon, hop on a tier. You get episodes early. We're going to be trying new stuff this new year coming up. So stay tuned.
Yeah, new year, new me, baby.
LOL.
As I always like to end these episodes and these recordings, be good to yourselves and each other.
We love you.
Cool shirt. Got this from my friend. From my friend for my birthday. My friend got me this.
Friend shirt.
No street lights, but we're finding our way in the dark, but we've got something.